Greetings adventurers, Frostback, and today I want to go over the Fire Mage guide that I have made. So I just wrote up a quick document that has links to all the different things that you will need. We're going to go over spec, spell damage to crit calculator, your pre-Biss going into AQ, your best in slot in AQ, at least what we're thinking as of this moment, your rotation, your cooldown usage, threat management, AoE rotations, your consumes, new consumes, and some Weakauras. So this is everything I believe you need to know for how to play Fire. There's obviously going to be more in-depth stuff. Fire Mage is actually way more complex than Frost Mage, especially when it comes to gearing, but we'll talk about that further in the guide. So let's start out with the spec. There's two main specs that you'll be using. The first one is Arcane Meditation. It's focused more on mana regen because Fire is a very expensive spec. It costs a lot of mana, and AoEing especially is very expensive as Fire. So this spec, essentially, you're getting all the fire damage talents, you're getting your hit, but you are missing out on flame throwing in this spec. You don't have improved fire blast, that's not a huge deal, and you don't have improved flame strike, so your flame strike AoE does slightly less, but you're picking up 10% more mana regen while casting, and then you have these 2 points to use inside the arcane tree pretty much wherever you want. It's basically either magic attunement for a better dampen, wand specialization for 25% wand damage, and magic absorption if you want to have a little bit more defensive ability and some mana regen from resisting spells, but the mana regen isn't very much from this. So those are your 3 options for those 2 points. But then if you're not as worried about mana, you're not really speed running, you're just kind of taking it chill, you have time to get mana and all that between each fight and everything, then this spec may be better. It only goes down in the arcane tree down to arcane explosion, so it takes the 2 points from magic attunement and arcane meditation and moves them into improved flame strike and 1 into flame throwing. So you have a little bit more utility with a longer range on your fire spells, and you have more crit on your flame strike to do that extra AoE burst. Now, where Fire Mage gets complex is when it comes to gearing. So this is the simulator that I plan on using for my Fire Mage. You can read through all this stuff. It goes over basically like how they ran the simulations and stuff like that. But ultimately what you want to come down to is you want to scroll down to here. So there's 6 different total simulations. 2 are on 2 minutes, 2 are on 60 seconds, and 2 are on 30 seconds. So you want to determine for which fight you're using. The numbers are pretty similar, so for now we'll just look at the 60-second ones. And then it's saying no ignite buffer and frostbolt buffer. So basically this one's not letting the scorch stacks drop at all. Like, this isn't ideal. You don't really want to do this. What you really want to do is this, which has a frostbolt, and we'll talk about another rotation after this that has to do with that you can do that's slightly more damage than frostbolt but riskier. But basically, so what this is doing is your value of crit changes depending on a lot of things within the raid. The first 2 main things are what % hit your mages are running at and how many mages you're running in the raid. So all your mages should be hit cap for AQ, right? Like, if you have Bloodvine gear, you have some BWL gear, you're hit cap. So we're just going to do 99% hit, and then I'd say an average casual raid would probably run about 5 mages, right? So we'll do 5 mages with 99% hit. So what this chart shows is on the left here, it shows, let me shrink my camera, it shows spell power, right? So this is showing how much 1% crit is worth in terms of spell power. And then this down here is showing what crit chance you have. So you have to add in your world buffs or not world buffs, your talent crit, and all that. So from your talents, you're getting a total of 6% hit for your fire damage. Your Scorch and Fire Blast are getting another 4, but only stick with 6 because you're mainly looking at your Fireball, right? And then you have 18% from world buffs, 21 when you have midsummer. So you're add 24 to what you have from your gear. Generally, it's around like 10 to 17 at the most. So if you're looking at 13, or let's just say 12 plus 18, 30 plus 6, so 36. So 35 to make it easy, right here on this line. And that's a slightly under-geared mage, I guess. So now if you're running between 300 to 900 spell power is what all these different lines are. So if you're like fully world buff, flasked, everything, you're running around like 700 to 900 spell power. So you're somewhere in here, which places your value for crit at about 10 spell power, which means it's not much more than frost. And this is what I've been trying to tell people on stream, that on fire, when it comes to fire, especially when you're world buffed, it's not going to be worth nearly as much as it was on private servers. So the reason that private servers Ignite crit was so much more valuable was because Ignite only had 2.5 second window that you could refresh during. So basically the first 2.5 seconds of Ignite on private servers you could refresh, and then the last second you could not. Then now on Classic, because there was a change in 112, so back in Nax Ram is for actual vanilla, where they made that Ignite window from 2.5 seconds to the full 3.5 seconds. So that means it's much easier to keep your Ignite rolling. If you're able to keep Ignite rolling, that brings down the value of crit because it's no longer needed to keep the Ignite rolling, which is the main damage from the critical strike, right? So you're only at 10 with world buffs. With 5 mages, no world buffs, you take off 18% crit, you're somewhere around a little bit less than 20, and then you're hovering maybe at like 13, right? And then if you go back to the charts and you look as you get less mages, critical strike becomes more valuable. And as you get more mages, critical strike becomes less and less valuable. So you're going to have to go and look at what raid you're running and come and look at these charts and determine your own value for crit, because there's not going to be any set value. And what this means is there's not going to be any set Biss lists either, because it's entirely dependent on your raid and your gear. But now that you guys know how to get your spell power to crit ratio to be able to determine your gear, we can go ahead and look at some of the gear. So the pre-Biss is pretty much the same. Like there's some changes that you can make, but in general, this is your best in slot gear going into a queue. So this includes picking up Rock Fury Bracers. These are going to be available once the gates open on the 28th. So in 6 days, well, the gates aren't going to open. The event starts. You can get your Rock Fury Bracers here. The gates, the first day they can possibly open is the 4th. So you have a whole week at minimum to be able to get your Rock Fury Bracers before AQ comes out. So that is totally feasible to do. Some changes that you could possibly make if crit's not as valuable for you is like you can change Mana Igniting Cord to Fire Maw's Clutch. You can change Mind Tier Band to another Ring of Spell Power. So basically, or Netherwind Gloves to like rank 13 gloves. So there's some changes that you can make that will drop some crit for more spell power if you are running a lot of mages for AQ. And this is your single target set, so you're going to want to have Bloodvine and have tailoring and all that. And remember, crit is still better than it is for Frost for Fire, even though it's not as good as it was on private servers. So that tailoring 2% crit from Bloodvine is huge. Now for your AoE, again, you're basically dropping hit for more crit. This is something that you would want it to look like. However, AQ doesn't have too many areas where you're going to be like wearing AoE set. You're more going to be wearing like a single target set that's like flat spell power for when there's going to be AoE, because there's not any areas like Suppression Room or like tech packs like there are in BWL, well, for AQ, so there's like nowhere where you're just going to be like, okay, I need to put on my AoE gear for like these next 5 pulls or whatever. Now, for your AQ Biss, I've put together 2 sets that are an educated guess from what we know now, because we don't really know how valuable spell penetration is going to be for fire because Fireball is a spell that can be partially resisted. Frostbolt cannot be partially resisted, therefore spell resistances did not matter for Frost. However, for Fire, your spell could be 25% of the damage partially resisted, 50%, or 75% of the damage partially resisted, or even 100. So Spell Pen is going to have some value. Also, these bosses are going to have increased spell resistances. We're guessing. We don't really know, honestly. So yeah, we just have to wait and see for those. And then also along with the differences between raid comps and how valuable crit is, it changes, obviously. But overall, this is something like what your best in slot will look like. It's basic, like your rank 10 shoulders and boots. One interesting piece that not many sets use is usually they wear legs of the Black Blizzard, whereas I believe Festering Swarm is better. It has more intellect, more stamina, and it has more spell power. However, it is only fire damage, but it has like 16 more spell power, and since I believe crit is worth less than 16 spell power, that means these are better. But yeah, some of your big items that you're looking forward to in AQ, this necklace gives you 1% crit. You do lose a little bit of spell damage though, but the crit is nice. This belt is very, very nice. 41 damage, 1% crit. These gloves are very nice. 37 spell damage, 1% hit. This ring is insane. 37 damage, 1% hit. This ring is also insane. And the offhand is really good too. Along with, for you non-rank 14s, there's going to be Femur, which is equivalent to rank 14 weapon minus 1 intellect. That is 7 intellect instead of 8 intellect. So AQ is when having rank 14 on a caster no longer matters, essentially. It just means that you already have this weapon. So yes, and then MQG is still going to be your best trinket along with Nels Tier, Toep, CHC, all that good stuff. Now for your AoE set, it's gonna look something like this. Wait, sorry. This one. There you go. So you have the AQ offhand, the AQ wand. Burrow's bracers have more spell damage than Rock Fury by 1. It's a very minor difference, but technically it's better. Now, Robes of Volatile Power are actually really good for AoE. Crit has a lot more value in AoE than it does for fire. So I place it around like 22 spell power for AoE. So these are definitely Biss. See, these are the leggings of the Black Blizzard I was talking about. These would be better for AoE, definitely. Hold on to your T2 gloves. I believe these are even better than the 37 damage 1% hit ones, because again, crit's 22 spell power. That would mean these are 42 spell power, and hit has no value in AoE. So yeah, this is still the most spell power from a cloak. Your boots, slightly different, 34 damage, spell damage. Mantle of the Blackwing Cabal, so hold on to this too for AoE. But yeah, remember, especially for AQ, you're not really going to be wearing an AoE set, so I don't think this will be really all that helpful. It'll be more like a single target set, like your single target set, and then you throw on like leggings of Black Blizzard because they're flat spell damage, right? Something like that will probably be more like what you're doing. Now remember, your AoE set isn't going to have as much value as it has in the past in BWL and MC. You're not going to be wearing it as often, but a set that you might be wearing a lot more often that you didn't have to have before is a non-world buff set. So this is basically a set that favors more crit, because remember, as we were looking at inside the spell power to crit damage ratio, crit becomes more valuable the less crit you have, right? Now, this is kind of skewed because it's like if only one mage dies, that doesn't instantly make crit valuable at that lower amount, because like all the other mages still have a lot more crit, but it should just keep you thinking about how when you're losing 18% crit, that way increases the value of your critical strike. So having another set that has more crit means you'll probably do more damage with that crit set than you would with your higher spell power set that's for world buffs. But now let's get on to the spell rotation, the juicy stuff of playing fire, how you actually play fire. Now there are two main options of how you play it. And always remember that playing a fire mage is not a solo DPS class. You are playing along with your other mages. It is a group DPS thing. You have to be playing with your other mages. Otherwise, you're either going to A, get someone else killed, or B, you're going to make everyone else not have a fun time, get yourself killed, or you could ruin everyone else's damage also. So just, you have to be confident in your other mages when you're playing fire, because one mage can fuck it up. But so for the first option, this is the safer option that ensures you're going to drop your ignite stats, and it's what you're going to want to do most of the time, honestly. So basically, your goal is to stack Scorch up to 5, because every time you apply a Scorch stack, you are getting 3% more fire damage to the target, so it goes up to 15% more fire damage. So you obviously don't want to get your ignites on there until your fireballs are doing 15% more damage. So the amount of times you cast Scorch is going to depend on how many mages you have. If you have between 2 to 5 mages, I'd recommend everyone casting it twice. And the reason is if you have 5 mages all cast Scorch once, yes, usually it will get 5 applications, but if one gets resisted, then it's going to just throw everyone off. So just doing it twice ensures that it will work. And then this is actually a typo. This should be 3 to 5 mages. If you have only 2 mages, you're going to have to do it 3 times each, right? And then if you have 6 mages, you should be fine just to hit Scorch once, each of you, and then move on into the rotation, because you should have 5 stacks up from there. So then after the 5 stacks are applied, then you're going to cast a Frostbolt. So for example, you would go Scorch, Scorch, Frostbolt. You don't have to do any pause in between. And the point of this Frostbolt is so that if any of these Scorches crit, which most likely at least one of them will, then it will put up an Ignite dot, but the Ignite dot will be a very small one because it's from a small Scorch crit. So you want to let that fall off before you try and stack it up to 5 ignites, because the way Ignite works is the first 5 applications of damage, it locks those damage numbers in. So if you get 5 fireball crits and then you keep rolling your Ignite, that's going to be doing a lot more damage than if you get 5 Scorch crits and then you keep rolling the Ignite for the rest of the fight. So you're going to all do 2 Scorches into a Frostbolt. So then that would be a synchronized setup to where you have a full 3 seconds of downtime, and then another 3.5 seconds until your fireball goes off. So it guarantees that even if someone misaligns and is going later than you, the fireballs won't hit until the ignite is guaranteed off. And from there, you just keep spamming fireball. And then if Scorch is about to fall off, you can assign one mage to just reapply Scorch every so often, just to keep it. And it has a 30-second duration, so you don't have to do it very often. You just have to cast one Scorch, reapply it, and you're good to go. And then you go back into fireball spam. Now, option 2, this is slightly riskier, but you will get more damage output out of it. So what you do is you do the same thing. Everyone Scorches up till 5 stacks, twice or 3 times, whatever, however many you need. And then after you Scorch, you're going to Fire Blast, and then immediately go into Fireball spam. So the reason this is supposed to work is that, let's say I cast 2 Scorches, and then after the Scorch, I immediately Fire Blast, right? Now, the Fire Blast and the Scorch are going off at the same time. So essentially, if either of them crit, it doesn't matter, right? So you'll probably get a 5-stack ignite if all your mages do this, because you'll have so many fire spells going in. If you have 4 mages casting 3 fire spells each, that's 12. The likeliness of 5 of them critting is pretty high. Now, what this does is after you Fire Blast, it gives you a 1.5 second global, right? So that means you have 1.5 seconds to wait there into a 3-second fireball, right? So now that's 4.5 seconds. And then you also have the travel time to the boss. So it gives you a decent amount of time, gives you like about a second of a window to let the ignite fall off. However, let's say one of your mages starts casting his scorches a second late, right? And then so he goes 1, 2 scorches, fire blast, and then starts fireballing, but his fire blast just went off 1 whole second after yours did and reapplied the ignite. But now your fireball is about to go off, 1 second sooner than his, so that could potentially reapply the ignite dot, making it so everyone has to stop casting, start casting a frostbolt, right? So that would massively reduce your damage, but it gives you the opportunity to do more damage, obviously, because you're getting more fire spells and you're getting a bigger ignite dot at the start, and then you're reapplying a bigger ignite dot faster. So this is a good option, and a lot of mages or speedrun groups, I'm sure, will eventually move to this, especially once they really get their synchronization down so that one mage isn't going later than the others. Now, you have this new spell called Combustion. Combustion makes you get 3 crits, but it's not a guaranteed crit. Each time you cast a spell, it increases your chance to crit by 10% if it didn't. So it's not a guarantee, but Combustion can still be used to help you roll your ignite. So basically the goal is to have a rotation on your Combustion so that Combustion is up for the entire boss fight. So you have the first mage pop it, a little bit later into the fight another mage pops it, a little bit later in the fight another mage pops it, later another mage pops it. A good way to kind of separate them is based on like number of fireballs cast. So you could have like the first one do it right on the pole. They can even do it before the pole and like do a few casts on like some trash to be able to like make it so like they have a guaranteed crit. But that's not really needed because you're going to be casting scorches anyways. So generally you can just pop it right at the start, cast your 2 scorches into your frostbolt or fire blast, whichever one you're doing, and then you'll probably have Combustion still up for when you're coming around to your fireball. And then that will give you basically a guaranteed crit on that fireball, and you guys are guaranteed to start getting that ignite rolling. And then you could have the next mage pop it after like 2 more fireballs, the next one after like another 4, and just keep going like that. And you can separate them or squish them together depending on the length of the fight. And then now your trinkets, in general, you're going to be using either MQG or your spell damage trinket. You're going to basically want to use them at the same time. You're not going to want to use them until after the scorches are applied. And ideally, if it's like a TOEP or something like that, you're going to want to do it like immediately after the scorches, right? To try and make that ignite as big as possible. Because if you get a TOEP fireball crit, that's going to do a bigger ignite dot than if you get just an MQG fireball crit or normal fireball crit. You're not really ever going to be wearing MQG and TOEP at the same time unless you don't have a Nelth's tier, but also PI at the same time, right? So that's where this comes in. PI, you're going to want to do that at the same time as your damage trinket, whether that's MQG or TOEP. You want to PI at the same time. So if you throw up those scorches, PI, TOEP, hit the fireballs, if all your mages are doing that, you're going to get an insane ignite dot. It's going to be doing a ton of damage, right? And then PI also obviously is a huge damage boost along with MQG, so you always want to be using those together as well. And using MQG right after the scorches isn't terrible. It's a little scary in terms of a threat. So like that one, it's not really that bad to go ahead and wait until like you use your Combustion maybe. But it is ideal to use the PI right then. So as long as your tank is good and you don't really have too many issues with threat, then it's ideal to use MQG and PI right after the scorches and try and go ham. Okay, so threat. This is where fire mages gets a little dicey because you're relying on not only yourself to not pull threat, but all your other mages to not pull threat for you as well. So what you guys have to do is if you see one of the mages or the Ignite mage specifically going too high on threat, then you're all going to have to start casting a Frostbolt in order to let the Ignite stacks drop. And then when the Ignite stacks drop, that one mage will go ahead and do another Frostbolt because they don't want to get the Ignite back. All the other mages go back to spamming Fireball. Once Ignite's up, the other mage can go back to spamming Fireball to be able to help keep the Ignite up, and that will allow you guys to probably just go ham the rest of the fight because you'll have a low threat mage now be gathering the threat quickly. So this may just be a common thing that you have to do like once per fight. It kind of just depends on your raid, how much threat your tank does and stuff like that. But fire mages are in fact pumpers when it comes to threat, so be ready for that. Now there are two other options that you can do that will probably be used to parse. It'll be more like for like kind of like cheese strats, but what you can do is Flask of Petrification. If you have the Ignite, if you Flask of Petrification, you can't get aggro, but you keep the Ignite dot and you don't lose your world buffs. You will lose your Flask. However, you will be able to have all your other mages continue pumping into the boss. You'll keep getting all that Ignite damage. You don't have to ever let it drop. So that is an option. It is a much more expensive method, but I'm sure you'll see mages doing that. You've seen them do it on Chromagus already in BWL, so I'm sure it'll happen in AQ. Now, another option is dying. Let's say your Ignite mage dies. He pulls threat and gets bopped by the boss, one shot, right? All the other mages, keep casting Fireball. Don't let that Ignite drop. Because what it's doing now is that Ignite is now still sending threat to that dead player. So your Ignite is now still doing damage, but not causing any threat to anyone that's alive in the raid. So therefore, all your fire mages can go ham and not worry about having to pull threat at all. So it's actually kind of a blessing inside of the curse of having your mage lose world buffs. So now that we understand the single target rotation and all the things that come with it, like cooldown usage and threat, we have to get into the AoE rotation. The AoE rotation always for mages is a little bit more complex than single target, because single targets pretty much do this, right? For AoE, you have to be more dynamic because threat is a bigger issue, and so is mana management because you can dump mana very, very quickly. So Flame Strike, you can literally sit there and spam Flame Strike as all your mages, and that will do the most damage if all your mages are spamming Flame Strike. However, it's a very expensive ability. Even after getting the mana return from Master of Elements, it still costs about 700 mana per time you use it. But spamming it will keep Ignite dots up on, it'll keep hitting Ignite dots on all of them, right? So that's why it does so much damage. But basically, most of the time, because of this, unless you're not, unless you're like doing like a parse run maybe, then you would do more spamming of Flame Strike. But if you're doing a speed run, you're probably just going to be like pre-casting one Flame Strike into spamming like Blast Wave, AE, Cone of Cold, stuff like that. So it's kind of similar to what we were doing before in BWL, except you're adding a Flame Strike in and Blast Wave because both of those do big damage. So if you Flame Strike into Blast Wave, you're getting some Ignite dots out there. And then if you're starting to just Cone of Cold and AE spam, then you're getting that steady, not too mana expensive AoE damage to follow it up and finish them all off. Now, remember, this is the same thing it's always kind of been, but if the mobs are super spread out, don't use Cone of Cold because you're not going to hit them all. Cone of Cold does do more damage than Arcane Explosion, but it doesn't do more damage if you only hit 3 mobs instead of hitting 6. So AE is a lot easier to hit a lot more mobs. Also, you're not going to have reduced threat from Frost Talents anymore, so your Cone of Cold is going to do more threat compared to what it was doing before, 30% more, which is quite a bit. And Flame Strike will be doing less threat than it was doing before by 30%, which is why you were really scared to do Palm Flame Strikes like right at the start of AoE fights in BWL. Now, going on to consumes, there's a couple new consumes that we got. The 2 main ones for mages, Brilliant Wizard Oil. 36 spell damage, 1% crit, can be applied to the weapon, 3 Fire Bloom, and 2 large Brilliant Shards made by an enchanter. This is amazing. You'll always want to have this on your weapon inside of from now going forward inside raids. It's one of the best consumables outside of Flask. And persist through death since it's put on your weapon. So it's pretty nice. Now another one, Elixir of Greater Firepower. This replaces Elixir of Firepower, so you won't need to get that one anymore. And this one gives you 40 fire damage for 3 fire oil and 3 fire bloom. Another very, very strong consumable that we have available to us now. Now the third one that we'll be getting that we won't use too much, but we will probably still want to use it, is the Dirges Kick and Chimera Chops. It's 25 stamina. Considering our other food and Run Tum Tuber Surprise is only 10 intellect, it's not really that good. 25 stamina is quite a bit of stamina. So anytime that you're actually worried about dying as a mage and you're taking damage, this is actually going to be better, right? And then from there down, it's all the same consumes that we were using in BWL. Obviously, you don't need all of them, and this is also not an entire list of every consume in the game, but for the most part, these are your main consumes that you want in your bag. And now finally, the Weakauras, the bread and butter of helping you play this game. First one, Scorch. All it does is it puts this little thing, you can move it around anywhere on your screen, and it'll show you how many stacks of Scorch are on your target and how long the dot is on there for, so you know when to reapply it and you know when you're at 5 stacks, etc, etc. Next up, Ignite Tracker. This one tells you how much damage it will do per tick. It will tell you how much time is left on the debuff, and it will also tell you who has the Ignite. So this will allow you to see, okay, this person has the Ignite, I see them on the threat table, I can see where they're moving, because essentially you're not really looking at your own threat as a mage, you're looking at the Ignite mage's threat, because they're probably going to be the highest threat mage in there who you're worried about. And then the damage number is kind of cool, and the time is actually useful because you want to, if let's say you see it at this, and you're finishing your fireball right now, well, instead of doing another fireball, throw in a fire blast. Just in case no one crits. Just in case, because you do not want that Ignite dot to fall off now. So you may save your mages a ton of damage by just hitting a Fire Blast right there. So you do have to be kind of dynamic with your rotation as a fire mage, and you will excel a lot more. Now, Combustion Tracker. This one's a little bit more complex. You're going to have to do some editing in this one, but once you input it in, all you're gonna have to do is you go into the thing and you will have to input some names into the Weakaura, which I'll go ahead and show you how to do right now. You just input your raids names into there. And then while we open that, the last one is a PI cooldown tracker, and it's a priest notification too. So this one's good to give to your priest and for you to also have yourself. Now, you send it to your priest, and all you're going to have to do is, once both of you have it, you put it where you want it, and you as the mage, you whisper the priest to tell them to PI you, so you make a macro that says somewhere in it, like, PI me, please, right? And then it will detect that you said PI and whispered the person, so then it will begin a cooldown, so then you now have, as a mage, you have the cooldown of PI, so you're not asking for it when it's not up. And then the priest will also get a notification, like this big box on their screen that shows, hey, the guy, your mage is asking for PI, so it's not just that little text box in the bottom corner, right? So this is good for both parties. Now, let's go ahead and show how you do input the names for the Weakaura for the Combustion Tracker. So to import, you import it, you paste it, because I just hit that copy Classic Weakauras button for the Fire Mage one right there, paste it in, import group. Now, gives you this, right? So, you got this, you can move it wherever you want so that it's set up inside of a good location, right? Okay, now come into here. So you go under trigger, and then you go under specific unit. Right here. and then you will type in the name, right? Bam, there's one. Then if you want to do another one, right? Trigger 2, specific unit. Bam, there's another, right? Trigger 3, and so on. Now there's more than 7 mages. You simply add a trigger, trigger 8, and then you'll have to go through and redo all these different things, right? So it's an event. You'll have to come through here, click event. Then what's next? It's combat log. So you have to come in here, combat log. You have to copy all those things, right? And that is how you set up your combustion one, and that will give you the cooldowns for all your mages' combustions, and that will help you roll your combustions better. So that is all the Weakauras that I have for fire now. I also have other mage Weakauras, obviously, but these are all the ones that I think really pertain to fire and raiding. However, there's going to be a lot more that I will be using. I'm 100% sure of it come AQ, like one that shows what spell is being reflected, one for Twin M's. So there's going to be a lot of other Weakauras that are going to be made for AQ, I'm sure, inside the next few weeks. So if you want to get updated on any of those, come check out my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/frostlive, and you can ask me there and see if I have any new ones available. But other than that, that is it for the Fire Mage guide. I hope this helps you guys be top DPS as a Fire Mage inside your AQ. I hope this helps all your mages prepare for it going into AQ, because remember, DPSing as Fire Mage is not a single man's game. This is a group game. You're playing with all your mages. So be prepared to play together, be prepared to rage at each other, and be prepared to get excited together. Until next time, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all on Azeroth.